I still remember that electrifying moment as if it were etched in molten gold. 100 heart-pounding words of discovery that shattered every illusion I'd ever built around our life. It was a chilly, overcast evening when, driving home from work, I decided to glance at my wife's car, our car, a symbol of our shared journey, and found something that made my blood run cold, a series of secret receipts tucked away in the glove compartment. Those receipts were no ordinary shopping slips. They were evidence of a hidden world I never knew existed, a clandestine affair and a secret love nest that had been thriving under my nose. In that instant, every promise, every smile, every whispered vow turned into bitter ash, and I knew my world was about to shatter. I had always believed that trust was the cornerstone of our marriage. We had built our life on promises of honesty, shared dreams, and the little rituals of everyday love, morning coffees together, weekend getaways, and even the small moments of silence when our hearts spoke in unison. My wife had always been my partner, my confidant, someone I assumed would never betray the sacred bond we shared. I took pride in the life we were building, even saving up for our first home together, planning for our future with a fervor that only true love can inspire. But deep inside, I had occasionally noticed subtle oddities, a receipt that didn't add up, a vague explanation for an unusual purchase, a momentary hesitation when I casually mentioned a bill I'd seen. I brushed those off as trivial oversights, remnants of everyday life. Never did I imagine that they were the silent heralds of a devastating truth. That fateful evening, as I drove along the rain-slicked highway, my thoughts wandered to the mundane, a playlist of our favorite songs playing softly in the background, the rhythmic thrum of the engine, the fleeting memories of laughter shared in our car. I'd always admired how she kept things organized and meticulous. After all, she was the one who managed our household budget and kept our records in impeccable order. So, when I remembered that I'd seen something odd in the glove compartment just days before, an inexplicable bundle of receipts, I decided to check it once more out of a sense of routine than suspicion. I parked in a quiet lot near our office building and, with a casual air, opened the glove box. My fingers brushed against a small, leather-bound envelope I hadn't noticed before. With a mix of curiosity and a vague sense of foreboding I couldn't quite shake, I pulled it out and opened it. Inside lay several receipts, some from upscale restaurants, others from boutique hotels in a part of town I didn't recognize. At first, I thought they might be for a business expense, perhaps a team dinner or a conference trip. But the dates, the locations, and the amounts told a different story. One receipt detailed a 2-night stay at a luxurious hotel downtown, while another showed charges for a lavish dinner at a restaurant known more for its private ambience than its business clientele. My heart began to race as the realization dawned on me. These weren't ordinary expenses, they were evidence of a secret that had been hidden right under my nose. I sat in stunned silence, the envelope trembling in my hand as I tried to piece together the fragments of a truth I had never suspected. Questions swirled in my mind like a hurricane. When did she start these secret outings? Who was the man behind these receipts? How long had I been living a lie? I recalled the subtle hints, the occasional hushed tone when I mentioned work, the evasive explanations for her late returns, and that fleeting look in her eyes when she thought I wasn't watching. In that moment, every small detail coalesced into a damning portrait of betrayal. Unable to contain the mounting dread, I drove home in a daze, the neon reflections on the wet asphalt blurring into a mosaic of confusion and pain. Once inside, I locked myself in our study and began documenting every scrap of evidence on my laptop. I scanned the receipts, typed out the dates and locations, and cross-referenced them with our shared calendar. Each receipt was a piece of a puzzle that, when assembled, painted a picture of a secret life, a life of lavish dinners, discreet hotel stays, and a romance that had been hidden away from my eyes. I felt as though every moment of our marriage was suddenly cast in a different, bitter light. That night, as I sat at the desk with the soft hum of the computer as my only companion, tears streamed down my face. I wrote feverishly in my journal, my words a raw outpouring of betrayal and heartbreak. I scribbled, "I trusted you with everything, my heart, my home, my future, and now I know that every promise was a lie." I relived every moment of doubt, every whispered secret I had once dismissed. The reality was too overwhelming. My wife, the woman I loved, was leading a hidden affair, and the receipts in that envelope were the tangible proof I had been too blind to see. As the hours passed in that lonely study, I wrestled with the dual torment of loss and anger. I questioned myself, how could I have been so naive? Was it possible that the woman I had believed was my everything had built an entirely separate life, one where I was not even a part? The questions pounded at my mind, relentless and merciless, as I contemplated the years of shared dreams now reduced to shadows. The pain was as physical as it was emotional, a gnawing void that threatened to consume me entirely. Yet, amidst that darkness, a small ember of determination began to glow. I realized that I could not allow this betrayal to define my future, to shackle me in a life of silent suffering. I owed it to myself to seek the truth, to confront the deception head-on, and to reclaim my dignity. In that moment, as the storm of emotions raged within me, I made a silent vow: I would no longer be a passive bystander in my own life. I would gather every scrap of evidence, every detail of this hidden affair, and confront her with the undeniable truth. I resolved that I would not let this betrayal go unanswered, that I would force the secrets of her double life into the light, no matter the cost. The receipts were not just paper and ink, they were the final, irrefutable proof that everything I had built our life on was a lie. I spent the rest of the night preparing my thoughts, organizing the evidence, and wrestling with the decision that lay ahead. The home we had purchased together, once a symbol of our shared dreams, now felt like a prison constructed of deceit. In the quiet solitude of the early morning, I stared out at the darkened sky and allowed the gravity of my discovery to sink in. I knew that the journey to confront her would be painful, fraught with anger, sorrow, and an unyielding desire for retribution. Yet, I also knew that I could no longer live in a state of perpetual betrayal. I was determined to reclaim my future, to expose the hidden truths that had been so carefully concealed, and to build a life defined by honesty and self-respect. As dawn broke and the first light filtered through the curtains, I closed my journal and took a deep, steadying breath. The truth was now undeniable, and the path ahead, though shrouded in uncertainty, was mine to choose. I vowed that this moment of revelation, this painful shattering of our shared illusion, would be the catalyst for a new beginning. I would confront the hidden world my wife had created, demand the answers I deserved, and ultimately, ensure that I was no longer defined by her lies. In the days that followed the discovery, my new home, once a symbol of hope for our family's future, turned into a prison of whispers and shattered trust. I found myself wandering its hallways at odd hours, haunted by every faded photograph and half-remembered conversation that now bore the stain of betrayal. Each creak of the floor and every sigh of the wind against the windows served as a relentless reminder that the life we had built was nothing but a fragile illusion. I was drowning in the overwhelming reality of her double life, and the silence of our once happy home grew oppressive, like the weight of secrets I could no longer bear. I spent long, sleepless nights holed up in the study, the dim glow of my desk lamp my only companion as I tried to piece together every detail of her hidden affair. I scoured through old emails, text messages, and even casually mentioned bank transactions that I had previously accepted without question. Each piece of evidence, a receipt from a fancy hotel, an unexplained charge at an upscale restaurant, a mysterious itinerary from a day I never spent together, was catalogued meticulously in a notebook. I wrote down dates, times, and locations, each entry a painful confirmation of the secret world she had built behind my back. At first, I couldn't even bring myself to speak aloud. I would sit in the dark, my fingers trembling as I turned page after page in my journal, desperately trying to make sense of the betrayal. Every memory of her was now tinged with suspicion. I remembered the way she would glance at her phone with a secretive smile, or how she would hesitate when I asked about her day. I had dismissed those moments as trivial, a byproduct of a busy schedule or the stress of work. But now, they all coalesced into a damning mosaic of deception. My thoughts churned like a violent storm. I questioned how I could have been so blind. The woman I loved had constructed an entirely separate life, a hidden existence that I had never even dreamed of. The betrayal wasn't just a single moment of infidelity, it was a systematic dismantling of every shared dream, every whispered promise that I had believed was unbreakable. The realization was devastating, leaving me numb, yet strangely, it also lit a spark of determination deep within me. I vowed that I would not let this secret define my future. I started reaching out to those who had always been a source of strength. I met with my oldest friend, Daniel, in a quiet cafe away from the prying eyes of our neighborhood. Over steaming cups of bitter coffee, I recounted every detail, the odd receipts, the late nights when she claimed she was working out that inexplicably turned into mysterious trips, and the constant gap between her words and my gut feeling. Daniel listened in heavy silence, his eyes filled with a mixture of pity and resolve. "You have every right to feel betrayed," he said softly, "and you deserve to know the truth. Don't let her double life destroy you, use it as the catalyst to reclaim your life." His words, simple yet profound, helped steady the storm inside me. In that moment, I began to draft a plan, a blueprint for confronting the hidden affair and reclaiming my dignity. I decided that before I could face her, I needed to gather irrefutable evidence that left no room for denial. I spent the next several days meticulously organizing every scrap of information. I scanned through digital receipts, compiled screenshots of suspicious text messages, and even retrieved call logs that hinted at conversations I hadn't been privy to. Every piece of data was catalogued with precise detail, building a timeline of events that painted a vivid picture of her secret rendezvous. With my evidence assembled into a thick dossier, I began rehearsing what I would say when I finally confronted her. I stood before the mirror in the study, practicing my tone and the questions that had been burning inside me. When did this begin? Who have you been with? Why did you choose to build a life without me? Each repetition of these words felt like a small defiance against the betrayal, a step toward reclaiming the voice I had lost in the wake of her lies. I realized that the confrontation would be the most painful moment of my life, but it was also the turning point that would set me free from the chains of deceit. Every day, I oscillated between moments of crushing despair and bursts of fierce determination. The memories of our happier times, those quiet, intimate moments shared in our living room, the gentle laughter echoing from our kitchen, now seemed like ghosts of a past that I no longer recognized. The house, which had once been filled with warmth and love, now loomed large as a constant reminder of the secret life that had been hidden in plain sight. I would walk from room to room, my mind replaying the subtle signals I had once dismissed, the way her eyes would dart away when I mentioned her workout schedule, the barely perceptible smirk that played on her lips when she thought I wasn't watching. The truth was now undeniable, and it filled me with a cold, seething anger that I could no longer contain. Late one night, as the rain hammered against the window and the world outside seemed to vanish into darkness, I sat in front of my computer, poring over the dossier I had painstakingly assembled. Each piece of evidence was laid out like a roadmap to betrayal, a timeline that left no gap unaccounted for. I clicked through pages of chat logs and scanned every receipt, the reality of her hidden affair unfolding before me in stark, unyielding detail. In that moment, the pain of her betrayal coalesced into a burning resolve. I would not let her secret life continue unchecked. I would confront her, expose the lies, and force her to face the consequences of her actions. As I drafted the message that would summon her to a meeting, my hands shook with a mix of fury and sorrow. I typed, "We need to talk. I have evidence, and I need answers." The words were simple yet carried the full weight of my shattered trust. I hesitated only for a moment before sending the message, knowing that this step would irrevocably change everything. The waiting was agonizing. Every minute felt like an eternity as I sat alone in the study, the rain a steady reminder of the tears I had yet to shed. During that time, I began to imagine the confrontation in vivid detail. I pictured her face, once so familiar and comforting, now contorted with guilt and regret. I envisioned the moment when I would lay out every scrap of evidence before her, the weight of my words slicing through the pretense she had maintained for so long. The thought of her having a hidden life, of her secretly spending time with another man in lavish hotels and under the guise of gym trips, filled me with a burning desire for retribution. I began to plan not just the confrontation, but also the steps I would take afterward, ensuring that the truth was not only exposed to her, but to everyone who had once shared in our lives. I contacted a trusted attorney to advise me on the best way to protect my rights as I prepared for this inevitable reckoning. Each consultation reinforced the fact that I had every right to confront her with the truth and to seek a future that was free from deception. The legal advice was a cold comfort, but it also served as a reminder that I was not powerless, that I could reclaim control over the narrative of my life. With every meeting, my resolve hardened, and the plan for a full-scale confrontation and public disclosure began to take shape. By the end of that tumultuous week, my mind was a maelstrom of planning and preparation. I had gathered every shred of evidence, documented every hurtful detail in my journal, and rehearsed my questions until they echoed in my mind like a relentless drumbeat. The once happy house was now a fortress of secrets, and every room seemed to whisper of the life my wife had led without me. Yet amid the bitter memories and painful revelations, a spark of resolve burned brightly. I knew that I could no longer allow this betrayal to define my life. I would force the truth into the open, and in doing so, I would reclaim my dignity. That night, as I sat alone in the study and listened to the relentless patter of rain against the window, I made a solemn vow. I would not be a silent bystander in my own life any longer. I would confront the hidden world of lies that had infiltrated our home, expose the secret affair for what it was, and ensure that every whisper of betrayal was met with the full force of my resolve. I envisioned a future where the truth was no longer buried beneath layers of deceit, a future where I was free to rebuild my life on the unshakable foundation of honesty and self-respect. In that moment, I felt the stirrings of a new identity emerging from the wreckage of our marriage. I was no longer the man who trusted unconditionally, who forgave too easily. I had been awakened to the harsh reality of betrayal, and with that awakening came a fierce determination to take control of my destiny. The evidence in my hands was not just a record of past sins, it was the blueprint for a future that I would build with my own two hands. The road ahead was uncertain, and the confrontation promised to be the most difficult challenge of my life, but I was ready to face it head-on. Now, as I stand on the precipice of that long-awaited confrontation, my heart is heavy with grief yet buoyed by a resolute determination. The secret receipts, the hidden messages, the carefully concealed timeline of her clandestine outings, all of it has led me to this moment. I will confront her, demand the truth, and expose the hidden affair that has so ruthlessly betrayed my trust. I may be scarred, and the wounds may never fully heal, but I now understand that my future is mine to reclaim. I will let the truth be the light that guides me out of this darkness, and I will forge a new path defined by the unwavering power of honesty and self-worth. I woke that morning to a silence that seemed to echo every lie I'd ever believed, each breath heavy with the shattered remnants of trust and hope. As the early light filtered through the windows of our new home, a house I had bought with dreams of family laughter and shared memories, it felt like the walls themselves mourned the loss of what once was. The revelation of her secret double life, uncovered through the hidden receipts in her car, had ripped apart the tapestry of our future. In that moment, I knew I could no longer live within the ruins of our shared promises. I had to confront the darkness and rebuild my life on a foundation of unassailable truth and self-respect. In the days after that dreadful discovery, my world turned into a labyrinth of doubt and heartbreak. Every corner of our house, once a sanctuary of warmth, now seemed tainted by hidden whispers of deception. I roamed the corridors in a state of disbelieving numbness, my mind a torrent of questions and accusations that echoed in the stillness. The receipts, the crisp, damning paper from upscale restaurants and discreet hotel stays, served as brutal testaments to the life she had been secretly living, a life that excluded me entirely. I spent endless hours in our study, poring over each receipt and matching dates with gaps in our calendar. I scanned old text messages, reread emails, and even dug through our financial statements until a clear picture emerged. My wife had built a clandestine existence, complete with intimate rendezvous and lavish escapes, while I remained blissfully unaware, nurturing our dreams of a happy family home. As that reality sunk in, a maelstrom of emotions swept over me. At times, I felt as if I were drowning in sorrow and disbelief, a tidal wave of regret and self-reproach that questioned how I could have been so blind. But amid the relentless despair, a small, emboldened ember of resolve began to kindle. I realized that I could no longer let her betrayal define my future. The home we had bought, meant to be the cradle of our shared happiness, was now nothing more than a monument to her deception. I had been given a second chance, an opportunity to mend what was broken, but she had not only squandered that chance, she had compounded the betrayal by living a hidden life, leaving me with a truth too bitter to ignore. Determined to reclaim control, I began gathering every shred of evidence with the meticulous care of a man who refused to be duped any longer. I assembled a dossier, a detailed, inexorable chronicle of every receipt, every bank statement anomaly, and every whispered secret. With each new piece of evidence, the scale of her deception became clearer and the resolve in my heart hardened further. I documented the evidence meticulously, labeling each receipt with dates and locations, cross-referencing it with our joint calendar. Every inconsistency was a nail in the coffin of our shared dreams, a piece of the puzzle that revealed a carefully orchestrated double life. At night, the relentless patter of rain against our roof became the soundtrack of my despair, and also the beat that fueled my determination. I poured my anguish into journal entries, each sentence a raw testament to the betrayal and a vow that I would no longer be silenced. I trusted you with my heart, I wrote one night, and you built a world behind my back where I was nothing more than an afterthought. But I will rise from these ashes and reclaim my life. Those words, scrawled in a trembling hand, were the first step on a long, arduous journey toward reclaiming my dignity. I began to confront the painful truth head-on, and soon, my inner torment gave way to a plan for retribution. I wasn't content to let this betrayal fester in silence. I decided that the world needed to know the truth. I reached out to a few trusted friends and family members, people who had always valued honesty above all else, and I shared my story with them. Their shock, their empathy, and their unwavering support provided a measure of solace, yet they also fueled my determination. I vowed to expose the full extent of her deception, to make it impossible for her to hide behind a facade of normalcy. I believed that by revealing the truth, I could not only reclaim my own life but also serve as a warning to others who might be led astray by similar lies. Emboldened by their support, I began drafting a detailed account of my journey, from the first glimpse of suspicious receipts to the gut-wrenching discovery that shattered my world. I launched a private blog, pouring out every painful detail, every sleepless night, and every moment of bitter realization. I wrote not to incite revenge for its own sake, but to bear witness to the transformation of my soul. My words were unvarnished, filled with the raw intensity of a man who had been betrayed but refused to be defined by that betrayal. As readers began to respond with their own stories of heartache and recovery, I found strength in the collective power of shared pain and the promise of new beginnings. Legal steps, too, became part of my journey. I consulted with a seasoned attorney who specialized in divorce and asset division, determined to ensure that every joint asset, every shared investment, would be scrutinized for any hint of misappropriation. I wanted to be sure that the consequences of her actions would extend beyond personal humiliation. She needed to face the full, uncompromising fallout of her deceit. Every meeting with my attorney was a reminder that I was taking decisive action, that I was no longer the man who accepted betrayal with silent resignation. With each signed document and every filed motion, I reclaimed a fragment of my lost dignity, building a legal framework that would protect my future and expose the truth for what it was. As weeks turned into months, the initial shock gradually subsided, replaced by a fierce clarity. I started to reimagine my future, not as the broken husband who had once been blinded by love, but as a man who had faced the harshest truths and emerged with a renewed sense of self. I redecorated my home, transforming the space that had become a painful reminder of our shared lives into a sanctuary of my own making. I filled the rooms with art and mementos that spoke of strength and resilience, a new beginning built on the foundation of hard-won truth. I began taking long walks at sunrise, the cool morning air invigorating my spirit, each step a silent declaration that I was reclaiming my life. Through it all, I never lost sight of the power of the truth. I continued to document my journey on the blog, sharing the highs and lows of my emotional odyssey with honesty and raw vulnerability. The act of writing became therapeutic, a way to process the layers of pain and to transform them into something that could guide me forward. I discovered that while the betrayal had left deep scars, those scars also told a story of survival, of a man who had refused to be defeated by the darkness of deceit. I recall one particularly transformative evening, sitting alone by the window as the last light of day faded into a soft twilight. I gazed out at the world, feeling both the weight of my past and the stirring of hope for a new future. In that moment, I made a solemn vow: I would not allow her lies to dictate the course of my life any longer. I would use every shred of pain, every bitter memory, as a stepping stone toward a future defined by my own choices, one where I was free to love again, but only on my terms, built on the unyielding foundation of truth. Now, as I look back on the tumultuous journey that began with the discovery of secret receipts and ended with the unraveling of our once sacred union, I see it as both a tragedy and a rebirth. The home I bought for my family, a symbol of hope and new beginnings, had become the stage for a cruel deception, a double life that shattered the very essence of my trust. Yet, in the aftermath of that revelation, I have emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to carve out a future defined by authenticity and self-respect. Every moment of betrayal, every sleepless night filled with sorrow, has led me to this point, a point where I stand ready to face the future with a heart scarred but unbowed. I am no longer the man who was blindsided by secrets. I am a man transformed by the unyielding power of truth. I have learned that while the wounds of betrayal may never fully heal, they can serve as the crucible for a new beginning, a chance to reclaim one's identity and to build a life that is truly one's own. So, as the dawn breaks on this new chapter of my life, I embrace the promise of renewal. I step forward into a future where my voice is heard, my worth is acknowledged, and my life is defined by the strength I have gained from every painful lesson. The road ahead is uncertain, and the scars may remain, but they no longer bind me to a past of deceit. Instead, they are the symbols of a warrior's journey, a testament to the fact that even in the darkest moments, the human spirit can rise, rebuild, and shine with the light of truth.